Our movie begins in this near-future Mexico. An opulent wedding party is brutally cut short by an invasion of the lower class. It is a spillover from violent protests spreading throughout the country, fueled by rampant injustice. Bride-to-be Marian and her family housekeeper, Christian, experience the chaos that ensues when the struggle for social equality swings between two extremes. Elderly patients in a hospital ward are evacuated to make way for numerous injured people being rushed in. Countless bodies lie on the ground, splashed with green paint as the sounds of sirens and gunfire fill the air. A pretty lady and a guy are dancing and kissing at a party when another man jovially interrupts them, but they soon join a group of friends for a toast. The party is for a wedding, and the couple-to-be wed are busy welcoming guests and accepting gifts from them. The bride dressed in red talks to her mother and father, wondering why the officiating judge hasn't arrived yet, but she is reassured. The mother takes the bride's cash gifts to a safe, goes to the bathroom to turn on the faucet, and is startled by the water running green. She calls her husband to check the faucet, but the water has returned to normal. In the kitchen, the helpers make fun of each other as the bride's mother asks their housekeeper, Marta, to look for whoever brought green paint. Then, a guest named Victor arrives with his family to congratulate and hand gift envelopes to the bride and groom. The bride, Marian, later complains to her mother, Rebecca, about the guests talking about business at their party. Marian and her groom, Alan, later return to their guests as they dance. One of the guests arrives at the party smeared with green paint on her neck. As Rebecca and Marian help the guest remove the paint, Marta informs Rebecca that a certain Rolando is waiting for her outside. According to Marta, Rolando is requesting help for his wife, Alyssa, who needs emergency surgery. At the house's entrance, Rolando asks for Rebecca's help to fund Alyssa's heart surgery. Unfortunately, Rolando had to move his wife to a private clinic because the public hospital was raided by protesters, and he needs to pay 200,000 pesos upfront. Rolando further appeals to a reluctant Rebecca, citing his and his wife's lengthy service in the household. Rebecca grudgingly gives in and asks Rolando to wait there. Meanwhile, Victor prepares to leave the party discreetly with his family. Rebecca hands Rolando cash that she raised from her husband, Ivan, and son, Daniel, and dismisses the old man as she's busy. Desperate because the money is not enough, Rolando remains there and catches the attention of Marian, who rushes to greet him. She hears of Rolando's ordeal, then goes to Daniel for help. Daniel talks to Rolando but is dismissive as well, giving him a few thousand pesos and threatening to throw the old man out. Marian sees this and asks Rolando to wait for her. Marian tries to open the safe containing the cash gifts, but realizes the passcode has been changed. Her father tells her that Rebecca changed it, so she goes to Alan, who's drinking with Daniel and a group of friends, to help her get the new passcode from her mother. At the same time, Marian berates Daniel. Alan agrees to help Marian, but she loses patience after he suggests they ask for her father's permission first. Marian retrieves some cash from her bag and goes to meet Rolando but finds out the old man left 20 minutes ago. Marian finds Christian, Marta's son and also one of the helpers, asking him to accompany her to where Alyssa is and learning she's at home. The two leave the house just as the judge arrives. Rebecca and her family greet the judge, while Marta is tasked to find Marian. Marta combs the house searching for the bride, eventually finding out from the doorman Felipe that Marian left with Christian. On their way to Rolando's place, Christian answers Marta's call, but Marian talks to her to explain. As they get rerouted by a police blockade, they listen to the news of escalating protests blaring from the radio. Back at the party, Ivan notices and scolds a group of raggedly dressed people climbing over their walls. As Ivan calls for security, they are startled by more people smeared with paint flanking them, one of whom is pointing a gun at the guests. The man with the gun shoots Ivan, and Felipe shoots another guest in the foot, ordering the other guests to go inside. The armed intruders force the guests inside the house while Felipe grabs Rebecca to take her somewhere else. Daniel and the others are herded to a room while Felipe forces Rebecca to open the safe as the other housekeeper takes their valuables. Soon after, a gunshot rings from Rebecca's room, and Felipe leaves with the housekeeper. More armed raiders have invaded the house, assaulting the guests and vandalizing the premises. Marta calls Christian while hiding in a closet with Daniel's wife, telling him not to return to the house. The raiders discover the two, and as one of them grabs Daniel's wife, the other hits Marta. Meanwhile, Christian loses contact with his mother as green paint obscures their windshield. Marian drives them out of a crowd of protesters, but Christian offers to take the wheel. Back at the house, Alan asks Felipe where Marian is, but the doorman points his gun at Alan's mother, Pilar, instead. In another room, one of the gunmen forces a guest to wire money by shooting the guest's wife. All around the house, the intruders continue to loot, vandalize, and take the rich guests' valuables while Rebecca and Daniel's wife die from their gunshot wounds. Concurrently, Christian drives through the streets beset by lawlessness while Marion hides in the backseat. They stop in front of a gate where Christian calls for his uncle, and Rolando shows up to let them inside. They accompany Marion to Alyssa's bedside while Christian tells the old man that Marion wants to take Alyssa to the hospital. Marion reassures Alyssa that everything will be fine. As the fiery unrest continues to burn outside, Christian takes Marion to his place upstairs. She hears reports of riots and attacks on local residents on the radio and takes a glass of water from Christian. Later that night, at Marion's residence, Marta walks through the pillaged remains of the house and runs for cover amid the chaos in the streets. The next morning, Daniel accompanies his father on one of the ambulances outside the house as Alan and Pillar see them off. Back at Rolando's compound, a tearful Marion tells Christian she wants to go home as reports of mass casualties and military-imposed curfew blare on the radio. Christian checks the street for safety but is apprehended by a group of soldiers. He leads them to Marion in the car, saying she needs help, but the armed group assumes the task of escorting Marion and tells Christian to stay home. In the back of a truck, Marion tries calling home in vain with her phone, but one of the soldiers informs her that the phone lines are dead. Her escorts find out her surname is Navilo from the Pedregal neighborhood and proceed to take her phone and jewelry. Shopping streets, plazas, and other affluent areas are littered with debris and remnants of brutality. At a church square, soldiers are moving bodies strewn across the ground. Then, a soldier shoots a motionless body at a ravaged protest camp. Finally, Marta makes it home to Christian. She asks where Marion is, and Christian tells her that soldiers took the girl home. Meanwhile, the corrupt soldiers take Marion to what looks like a military complex, into a holding area where she is marked on the forehead. Inside one of the cells, soldiers interrogate the women for their names, ages, addresses, and names of family members, including Marion. At a hospital, a funeral home representative approaches Daniel regarding the paperwork for his wife and mother's funerals. Daniel acknowledges her words before breaking down in tears. Later on, Alan and his mother comfort Daniel, who goes off to get changed. Afterward, at a government building, Daniel and Alan meet with Victor, who assures the two men that he'll find Marion. They are also introduced to General Ori, who echoes Victor's reassurance. Meanwhile, at the military complex, Marion and a number of prisoners get taken to a different cell where their captors force them into depraved acts. A while later, Alan, Pillar, and Daniel listen to a priest's last rites for their deceased loved ones, along with numerous other people at the cemetery. At Rolando's place, the old man sets off for the hospital and leaves Alyssa in Marta's care. He tries to pass through a military blockade but gets turned away. Around the same time, Daniel and Alan move the remaining possessions from the Navilo residence, then bring Ivan to Alan's home. Victor visits Ivan there, promising to find Marion. In the living room, Pillar expresses concern to Alan, pointing out that it's already been a month since Marion disappeared without any news. At the military complex, Marion is forced to record a video message for her parents, telling them to give her captors whatever they want. That night, Rolando ventures out again to find a doctor for Alyssa, approaching the military blockade enforcing the curfew. When the old man defies the soldiers' warnings, he is shot. Later on, Christian and Marta attend the funeral rites for Rolando and Alyssa at a church overseen by soldiers. Concurrently, Daniel receives an audio message with Marion's voice, including instructions for paying her 10 million peso ransom sent to Ivan's phone. The message ends just as Ivan asks about Marion. Back at the military complex, the hostages get hosed down in a communal bathroom while corrupt soldiers observe them behind a window, arguing about their shares once ransoms are paid. Then, a female soldier takes Marion to an external cell to feed her, and promises to help her. While eating dinner, Christian and Marta are visited by two soldiers who claim to have kidnapped Marion. The soldiers now impose an 800,000 peso ransom on Christian and Marta in exchange for Marion. When Marta asks where they can get such money, the soldiers order them to use their jobs as housekeepers for the rich. The next day, Christian tries to make his way to the job office to get a job permit, but a military blockade turns him away. Meanwhile, corrupt soldiers continue humiliating and torturing their hostages at the military complex while Marion huddles with her fellow captives in terror. Elsewhere, Daniel and Alan show a ransom video to Victor and General Ori. The general assures them the military will track Marion with the information they've gained. Later, Christian and Marta travel through multiple military checkpoints to get to work. A broadcast of strict rules regarding IDs and work permits plays from POS systems the entire time. Soon enough, they arrive at Alan and Pillar's home, where they are greeted by Pillar. Christian goes to meet Daniel and tells him about the soldier's ransom for Marion and how she got kidnapped in the first place. Daniel relays the story to Ivan, who tells his son to pay the ransom without informing Victor. Then, Daniel starts handing cash over to Christian even though Alan is skeptical about the deal. At the military complex, Marion hears the corrupt soldiers celebrating the success of their schemes. One of the hostages is told he is free since his ransom was paid, but a gunshot rings out after he is escorted out. On their way back home, Christian and Marta pass through the security checkpoint without incident. They're escorted by Marion's kidnappers to their home, where they hand over the cash smuggled inside their clothes. When Christian asks where Marion is, the soldiers tell them the money was only a down payment, and they will be expecting $1 million the next day. The following morning, Christian and Marta relay the grave news to Daniel, who promptly calls Victor and reports the mother and son as Marion's abductors. That night, General Oribe and his soldiers wait with Marta at her home, where Christian brings in the two kidnappers. General Oribe sarcastically lashes at the culprits, makes them take off their masks, and orders his soldiers to apprehend them. Marta is then taken away in a black SUV. Then, General Oribe's soldiers rescue Marion from the military complex, transporting her in a convoy of black SUVs. As they leave, General Oribe's remaining unit summarily shoots the corrupt soldiers and other prisoners, burning their bodies afterward. Soon after, Marion is taken to Marta's house, where she is shot by a soldier in Christian's presence. The soldier puts the gun in Christian's hand and then shoots him as well, making Christian look like Marion's killer. The next day, Daniel is brought to Marta's house, where Victor and General Oribe sympathize with his loss. Sometime later, General Oribe, Victor, Ivan, and Daniel watch the hanging of a group of criminals, including a crying Marta. A black bag and noose are placed over Marta's head, followed by the drop a moment after.